That obviously is not 6 months, it's much more. So considering also the duration of this, it's unpractical to do this. We propose to work with the ministry, and this is a formula that allows to incorporate the voluntary with the administrative one. We realized with the team that we could use both administrative and judicial and legal to take the speed of the administrative path with the benefits and costs of the legal path, shortening times and avoiding the legalization. And we work with the Undersecretary of National Monuments. He understood this was a good idea because he understood it was a very good measure for economic activation. We are identify a table with referential prices that courts have provided so everyone knows what is the price of these easements. With the Council of National Monuments, we've also to design the areas of project to be able to avoid damages. During exploration, we identified two areas. In this case, is the need or the obligation to report the finding to the Council of National Monuments because the law forces to notify these findings to the Council. If there are doubts that could delay these activities. And for these reasons, in August 2019, we had a meeting with the Council to be able to deal these problems. It was indicated that the Council of Monuments is we can tell you that the council is currently working on different protocols, one of which is related with the obligation to report findings, although there is no date for its publication. The council also indicated, and the Public Works developed a guideline for this area, this issue is treated, which could be incorporated for mining exploration. And finally, it was indicated that we worked to elaborate a document to try to develop this obligation. And there's a lot of work that's been done in this area, and we will continue to work on this to finish it in a good manner. We know that the GPS office worked on a guideline that was published, but we also want to work on a specific guideline for explorations. I'll speed up my pace for this presentation. With the Ministry of Defense, we also saw opportunities to advance the objective that of the meeting that we had was mainly to talk of the authorizations that all mining companies should have to develop activities in military area. There's certain areas of our territory that are exclusively for military exercises. But these are extensive areas and areas that eventually could have ore deposits. And there's a difficulty for exploration. During the last years, this undersecretary has rejected. They told us, well, you can't explore here because I have very few places for military practices. And there's a risk that we could lose these areas if we discover a deposit. The possible existence of explosive material is a difficulty that we've observed, or by the overlapping of activities, mining activities, and military activities. And we proposed solutions, for example, to calendar activities. And there the task group is working on this to avoid overlapping and to explore, to identify these problems. We also established the need to develop together a document with specific standards to require these permits. And on this issue, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the Undersecretary Vargas, and was very open to advance on this. He mentioned that these concerns existed, but he also understood that Chile was undergoing an exceptional moment where it was necessary, where all sectors sh should pitch in to reactivate the economy. Regarding the CONAFA, the National Forestry Council, these permits regarding the cutting of trees are specific permits that have to be issued for mining exploration and take a lot of time. We have been working with CONAF, and they have indicated they reduce the duration of the issuing of these permits through new guidelines or instructives, specifically for mining exploration, considering its temporary and short duration of said activity. We're proposing to them we'll continue to and retake with them conversations that we had started last year. So regarding the conclusions, to start wrapping up this presentation, we can say that the activity mining exploration is a temporary and is developed in remote areas, far from urban areas. This characteristic merit that procedures and rules should be applied differently, and that is our belief to provide these installations require at the same time require permits that can be difficult and cumbersome due to the requirements or to the issuing times. There are permits, critical permits, for example, for cafeterias or for water treatment. And we'll continue to work on this point, considering that this will allow to advance in mining investment in the country and to discover new deposits. We will channel all these initiatives that we mentioned step by step, the step-by-step plan by President Piñera launched some weeks ago, and that was which an advising council was created to recover our economy, led by Minister Moreno. The idea is that in this advisory committee, all the proposals that we made should be incorporated as measures for reactivation at in a task group focused on permits and authorizations. And at the end of these activities, we can have hopefully specific goals, our proposals, deadlines, and this is the way that we're thinking how to retake this activity and to have concrete results in the short term. Thank you. I hope that I didn't bore you too much, and I hope that this information is useful for you and satisfactory. Undersecretary, thank you for your presentation.
No nos ha dado ninguna lata porque la verdad que cada uno de los temas se van
It has been very interesting because each one of these issues will continue to be addressed during this seminar. I also like to thank all the support that the government gives to exploration, to junior companies through its ministry. So we're going to move to the second part of this event where we have 5 panelists who will answer the following question. But first, we will start with Francisco Acuña, who is senior consultant of CRU Consulting, also known as CRU. Talk of the positive factors for exploration, Chile, the political implications of the new referendum in Chile, and financing options for exploration in Chile. Francisco, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Marcelo.
Thank you, Marcela, for the introduction, to thank the organizers and attendance. Time is short, and there are many things to cover. First, I'd like to take just a minute because among the attendance, there's probably a broad profile of attendance. I would also like to highlight important aspect of exploration and juniors, which is the financing side. I wrote a article or an op-ed to what is NotCo, what's its similarities with mining exploration, and it's a high risk, high cost with low successful rate. It's very simple, similar to a venture capital or to a startup, tech startup that requires high levels of capital, high costs to reach a points where they're profitable, or the case of exploration, to discover a deposit and then ideally to sell that project to a major for production. To understand that it's a very difficult business that has a very clear entrepreneurship seal to it, and therefore Canada and Australia, who host this event, where we've seen the largest amount of juniors, because in those countries there are financing hubs to capture these risks, financial institutions to perform exploration. The first call in Chile is to say, is to understand this part. For example, regular people or investment funds to know more about exploration.
Y eso que es algo que lamentablemente nos falta.
And that is something that we are missing today. We also need geological perspection that we do have. Chile is a mining country in copper and rare ores. And however, there's much to discover yet, and it's becoming more and more difficult where to look for. Regarding the first step, going back to financing, this is also very connected to commodity prices, and mining production move as these flows move. During the last 6 years have been terrible for the junior industry. Low commodity prices, there hasn't been much incentives for exploration. On the other hand, other financing mechanisms have been very good, such as these S&P 500. There are other instruments that have caught the attention of investors in not exploration. Now, what's happened with COVID, which changed the reality of the world, the pandemic in itself, obviously, that forced drastic changes in supply and demand of all types of goods and services. And on the other hand, this will leave a economic crisis post COVID-19. And what's happened in this sense? Some commodities have been benefited in their prices. For example, gold and silver as instruments that are favorable during times of volatility. Gold has even reached the record prices over $2,000 the ounce in August. And this has revitalized the junior sector in Canada and Australia because there's interested investors not only to have access to gold and silver, but also junior stock. One of our panelists today, we have Kingske, which is a gold and silver project. Because given the volatility that exists today, the depreciation of dollar, fiscal stimulus in almost all countries, this has made that this volatility that has made gold and silver to have an auspicious future. Specifically, gold probably will reach its peak in the next 2 years, and silver should start to become stronger from 2023 and on. Copper, we've seen good news recently $3 the pound, over $3 the pound. This is very good compared to March, where we reached the bottom. This opens the possibilities to have access to financing and to have reactivation and exploration projects. Now, moving on, how is Chile able to capture this? Because projects that start today in exploration will enter production in 10 years or 20 years more. So it's a long-term project. On the one hand, a couple of weeks ago, Cochilco provided a report if on future investment in mining, calculating $7 billion. Large part of those investments are expansions of current installations. And something that is pending is how do we develop new projects? One side is to let's take the opportunity now that there are more financing alternatives, although not simple yet. In international markets, ideally, if Chile we could also participate, would be good. And how to have projects. One of the issues that probably will appear during the conversation also is that Chile, there's very little rotation of mining licensing or mining property for exploration. Maybe because the incentives haven't existed through the industry from large mining, large scale mining to individual people. Many times there are no incentives to create new projects. So it's good to have possibilities to facilitate the entry of these exploration projects. As I said before, one of the issues is the access to mining property, mining rights. And we hope in this macro situation where commodities, example, in Chile, copper and rare ores that have positive impact, to have access to financing and to have capacity to explore. However, that capital, I've always said this is an international competition. That capital will could go to Chile, Peru, or to Ecuador, Australia, Canada, or Africa. And in that sense, we have to consider this competition to increase our competitiveness today and also to understand we'll have competitiveness production tomorrow. Another point, if I still have time, is to consider, and that has also caused 1 more minute. The last point that is important to mention is that one the biggest changes that we're seeing in a post COVID-19 world is the move towards a more sustainable world and electromobility. And copper is a winning ore in electromobility. A battery uses, these batteries uses 4 times the amount of a copper of a normal battery. And electromobility will create an increase in demand in copper. So it's important to understand that the world dynamics are changing. Chile can continue to support large amount of the challenges that global economy has, and it's good that everyone should transit towards that sector. And I think I'm on time, so I hope then during the panel to have a bit more interaction with the rest of the panelists. So I'll hand the floor for you to continue with that. Thank you, Francisco.
Que abordaste. Efectivamente, a continuación del panel vendría preguntas y respuestas.
After the panel, we'll have a Q&A that we've been receiving from our audience. And the moderators will now present each one of the panelists. I'd like to give way to the 4 panelists that we have today. I'll name them very quickly. Giancarlo Daroch, Exploration Manager at Capstone Mining. Alejandro Llanca, Manager of Finance of Laguna Resources, Chile, from Kingscape.
José
Ignacio Silva, Country Manager, Chile, Hot Chile. And Martin Marquardt, partner and manager of exploration of Activa Mining, which is a Chilean company. To the four panelists, I'll ask a common question, which I'll ask you to answer according to your own experience from your own companies that you represent. The first question is, how was the process of your company to start exploration processes in Chile, the upsides and the downsides? What could be improved in the system so that Chile can continue to be attractive for exploration, especially for juniors, which are the ones that move the needle in this area? Please answer, each one of you, after 2 minutes, that you'll be able to present the companies that you belong to. The order will be as follows to start preparing. Giancarlo Daroch will start. We'll ask Alejandro to continue, followed by José Ignacio Silva, and finally Martin. Giancarlo, the floor is yours. So thank you, Marcelo, and thank you to everyone. Thank you to the panel. First, I'd like to tell you about Capstone Mining. Capstone is a operating company that produces copper focused on base metals. Or has two operations currently. One's Cosamina in Mexico and Zacatecas, and another in Pinto Valley in Arizona in the United States. Between both operations, Capstone produces about 70,000 tons of fine copper per year, to give you an idea of the scale. Chile, Capstone is the owner of 70% of the Santo Domingo project, which is in Atacama, clear or near Diego Almagro, and now is undergoing the first stages of construction. In parallel, there are more initiatives in exploration in Latin America. Today, we are very active in Mexico, in Sonora. We also have a project in Brazil, in Carayas. And in Chile, we have been, during the last 7 years, 8 years, exploring actively in different regions in the north. Today we are looking for new opportunities. All these projects have been explored and we've returned them to their owners. So I'd like to tell you what has been the experience of Capstone in Chile. First, it entered with the acquisition of the Santo Domingo project. We acquired Farmers Mining, who was the junior who discovered first, and there two entities were created. One was Santo Domingo to advance the project from pre-feasibility, feasibility, environmental assessment. We received our permits recently, and today, as I told you, we're starting construction. In parallel, the subsidiary was focused on, started from scratch, creating the company and looking for new opportunities and projects to perform exploration. And in that sense, our experience has been very positive. Chile, we believe, has competitive advantages, good geological advantages, despite there are people that say that Chile is a mature country. We believe that there are possibilities for new discoveries, and probably not in the more traditional areas in the mountain ranges. We are focused on from the coast mountain range, where we believe that there is potential for medium or small mining deposits. Also, I think one of the advantages that we have with other countries in the region is the variety and quality of services related to exploration. Today, there are many geophysics companies or offices, drilling offices, and you can pick who to work with. Metal labs, the infrastructure is also very good. There are many areas where possible to explore year round. And in general, that is what we've seen in comparison with other countries where that situation is more difficult. The difficulty that we've had is access to project. Francisco talked on the issue of mining rights, which is a system that limits access to new investment in the end. In our experience, we've negotiated with a mayor and with private entities. And finally, the type of agreement that one reaches, regardless, in our opinion, has been a bit, in our opinion, difficult in comparison with other countries where we require high cash payments and royalties. And that forces the project in itself has to be bigger prospect, or better profitability to be able to move it along. So what things could be improved in Chile to make attractive exploration? If you can start wrapping up, you have 1 more minute. It's no problem. So a couple of points, just a couple of points. It's always, mining rights are always talked of being or needed to be reformed. Maybe making a couple of changes. First, to execute the many rights that the rights haven't been, or the patents haven't been paid for 3 or 4 years. The judge sends them, and that limits the access to new companies to be able to have access to new projects. And another is to limit the overlap of rights. There are many areas that are overlapping within each other, which could impede the identification, and owners can overlap their rights over the same areas of land. And that doesn't require a complete reform to the system, but it could move the needle, as it said, to have more investment for exploration in Chile. Thank you, Giancarlo. We will hand the floor to Alejandro.
Gracias, Marcelo.
Thank you, Marcelo. Good morning.
Al subsecretario.
To panelize to the Undersecretary, first to congratulate both chambers for the initiative today,
En especial a Verónica Guzmán.
especially to Veronica Guzman and Jimena Lopez, who we do not see on screen, but was a great driver of this activity.
Contarle un poco de la compañía
I'd like to tell you a
brevemente.
bit of our company. Obviously, our company in Chile, as we said before, is called Laguna Resources Chile Limited, a subsidiary of an Australian company called Kinscape, 100% owner of the Chilean subsidiary. We have a project in the Atacama region. The project is at 4,000 meters of height. For those that locate another region, it's a project, as Francisco said, gold and silver, and we have 3 deposits to called Arqueros, Tetrice, y Chiperos. These 3 deposits are located in this area that we call New Esperanza. June of this year, we had the good news that to have our last RCA was approved, and we want to reach the next stage to build, and within our estimations, to start from the second semester of next year. The general question that Marcelo made, I'd like to separate it into 2 parts to explain more in detail some of the things that we've seen. Probably other companies have lived through too. First, the negative aspects. One of the first things that we had to face, that we faced were social issues, which most companies have faced. And these appeared in indigenous consultation process, but realized that providing information and meeting with them, we were able to have a good understanding to work together with communities and to have different agreements signed with different communities. Another issue that Giancarlo mentioned that has affected us is there's a lack of updated mapping of easements also. And at this point, for example, we wanted to have a easement for transit and it didn't exist. We went to different ministries and we couldn't find updated information. And also we had the same problem to have these extended issuing times. And we've also seen progress in the environmental impact assessment times. We've worked with different offices to be able to streamline these permits. And we believe that it's on the right track, but we also believe that we need to be more competitive, more agile, less bureaucratic. And the institutions should improve in these aspects so that our country is much more attractive for foreign investment. Within the second part of the question, what can be improved? Alejandro, you have 1 more minute. Giancarlo mentioned many things, the Undersecretary too. Aside from mentioning new things, we should highlight some things that Chile has. We should improve. We have more than 30 years experience. We're a serious country. We have adherence to the rule of law. We're concerned of social affairs and of the environment. We should highlight that we have new types of exploration occurring of green hydrogen.
Mineros con combustible dual, hidrógeno diésel, lo cual es buena noticia.
And to conclude, to mention something that the Undersecretary said, the 2050 mining policies that's being developed will help to promote foreign investment, to improve competitiveness, and to focus on 2 parts, sustainability and efficiency. And to close, to wrap up, I dream to create institutions that gathers all the juniors. Maybe it should be necessary to have an institution that joins us together to make us more attractive for foreign investment. It's very interesting what you propose. That would be a good, if you could start to shape that. And I'll assure you that you will have support from the government and from the majority of people here.
José Ignacio de Hot
José Ignacio from Hot Chile, the floor is yours.
Ahí sí, gracias.
Hola, muchas gracias a la Cámara Canadiense.
Thank you to the chambers for this seminar. First, I'd like to start with some good news. For Chilean juniors, 48 hours, we request this is voluntary suspension of our actions in ASX. This pending the announcement that we believe that will be the largest announcement in our company. We've had a series of projects along Chile, and we focused on the area of the Huasco Valley to the south of Vallenar. And this Monday or Sunday evening, we'll be announcing to the market an important mining resource in our mining hub located in the third region. And we believe that this news will be very important. Not only Chile, it will be an important news internationally for mining. How did we start? Basically, 10 years ago, the structure of juniors, it's a very pyramid shape. We start with many green projects, which we select the best of the best. We have basic exploration, land geology, all types of geological studies that do not imply drilling because it's the most expensive. Not only most expensive, we have to try to help Chile to advance because we're an important part of why exploration is halted. We have to consider that mining exploration has success that we calculate between 1 or 2%. Every 100 drillings or 100 projects that one has, you'll have very little success. It's very difficult. That's why it's important to have discoveries, to be able to tune that aim and then to move to prospection and to do things. But it's very difficult. The economic cycle is terrible. When 70% of our peers went broke in Australia and Canada too, we're told, and the only juniors that are left are the ones that have an asset. Our first mining discovery was done in 2010. We've been able to raise capital, but the most of it placed in Chile. Very recently, 2016, we were able to have the pre-feasibility project for production, 250 million tons, basically, that will be reviewed on Monday to provide an update. And a pre-feasibility implies to start defining the economy of the projects. We realized that the economy of our projects is a project that is a bit short. We had 10 years of mine life, 60,000 in concentrate, 6,000 fine copper through oxide. And we said, we need better economy in our project. We have to go look for. And we started to look around ourselves and we realized that was much more than what we thought. We decided to close a project 2 years ago where we've been to date, we've injected 20,000 meters of drilling drilled by us in Chile. This new project has 20,000, and with these 20,000, we discovered a large area in this area, deposit in this area, which will extend the life of the mine and will enlarge the deposit 2 or 3 times its current size. These are hubs separated. These are 10 to 15 kilometers of separation that separate these projects, but we're going to add the synergies to be able to improve the economy of the projects. That would allow us to bring in more capital. Regarding the questions we have, this is a stable country. We have geology inside. We don't have, for example, forests that have to be cut down to be able to access ore. We have 4,500 kilometers of coast where we can extract water. Most new projects use desalination plants to not affect communities. And we'll have to play between advancing with good economy and to have the communities on our side to be transparent, to be seen as good social factors and not as someone that wants to pillage. That we are placing in the country not only money but also service, mining, geology, indirect services. There's a whole bunch that we have to do with juniors. And these are companies that will create strength in our country. Thank you, Jose Ignacio. We'll be following very closely your announcement. I'd like to hand the floor to Martin, representative of one of the few Chilean juniors
Eso es lo
that
que
and we should try to promote this because Chile should, as a mining country, should have much many juniors that hopefully should be public in the stock market. Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you for the initiative.
Bueno, como señalas, Marcelo,
As you say, Marcelo, Minería Activa is a Chilean company. It's not exactly a junior, it's in a private investment fund with 100% Chilean capital, created in 2008, thanks to the initiative of a technical team comprised by a geologist, an engineer, and an attorney that were chasing assets that they knew and looking for financing. And they located Activa, which is an arm of La Reinvial, a branch of La Reinvial, a banking company. After that, what happened is that we purchased Dominga, which is a iron project. Very quickly, we could invest and to have infill exploration campaigns, implementing resources, increasing iron resources, and looking for valuation through pre-feasibility studies, and we were able to sell successfully Dominga. After that success, Activa could develop other projects, among which projects close to Vallenar in iron, a deposit of almost 1 billion tons of iron. Another project, which are we've also developed close to Vallenar, that have options in Itetsu. They're developing the potentials that we could discover. We also had a series of discoveries. All this occurred before 2014 with the discovery of a project near Copiapó of gold and copper that we believe have high ore grade over 300,000 ounces. And thanks to the funds, we were able to leverage a more crazy idea that we had, which was to look for other types of deposits, such as rare minerals, rare ores. We took almost a year and a half, 2 years to be able to identify that what's a deposit in Chile that is very similar to what occurs in China, which are deposits of ionic absorption, where we have rare soils. The south of Chile, they're very similar to what is found in China. So with that challenge, we're able to advance in pre-feasibility, feasibility, pilot plants, and to have an important sell of the project. Currently, we are developing a mining fund after the crisis that was mentioned, that we were focused on low risk projects, not so much refill. And with the mining fund, we were able to purchase a mine in Pampa Camarones with distress, with losses, accumulated losses. So with a new geology vision of the geological model and plus optimization engineering, we are able to have a new mining operation that is selling cathodes and with blue numbers. We're developing that since 2017. Another project from our mining fund, these polymetal deposits, and we are developing feasibility. We have the metal results with a good, very good forecast. And addressing the questions that Marcelo made, I agree completely with all the comments that the Undersecretary talked of these issues. I think maybe we have this dissonance that exploration is very short, but it's very difficult. But the mapping and drilling takes 2 years or more. So there's a process that we have to understand from exploration. That says the ministry has to get involved a bit more to understand how projects are developed, how they're successful, and how they develop later. I agree. You have 1 more minute. I agree with positive things in Chile. We've been able to develop exploration. If oh, aside if we find different type of fauna or archaeology or cactus, but with certain mitigations, you have to foresee to understand the area that you're located to understand its impact. In Chile, can be done, and we've been able to advance on that prior environmental assessment. Negative things, costs I think are a bit high. I don't know if sometimes it's because of the mayors and mines in operation that sometimes you want to do drilling and basically you find high costs still. And other positive things, I think that technical quality, as Giancarlo said, of people, the teams, and to work it with multidisciplinary teams, that is a good approximation for the challenges of exploration. I don't know if that answers the question. Absolutely, Martin. Thank you. I followed very closely the development that you've had throughout time. And the truth, I didn't know everything that you said. I congratulate you even more. Let's move very quickly to the module where I'd like to present 3 moderators that were mentioned by Veronica. Maria Paz Pulgar, Director of the Chilean Australian Chamber, attorney, the Felipe Attorney Group. Thank you, Marcela. Thank you to our panelists for the interesting exposition that you've made of these different topics. We were notified that the Mr. Undersecretary has to leave at 12:30. So if you agree, we'd like to present him the questions that participants have made through on our chat. We group them in large issues because the doubts repeat themselves and they're more or less the same or are very similar. So, Mr. Secretary, if you could listen and answer the questions. There you go.
Muchas gracias. Un primer grupo de
The
preguntas
first group of question refers to the access to non-utilized exploration areas.
se ha levantado como
So it's been raised as a question even by our panelists.
en
These are issues that have been presented in other instances to promote exploration. It refers to that there are large areas of land, very interesting areas that are used or occupied for years without having true mining activities, and also impeding junior companies to access those areas to do exploration. True, it's something that we know very well, but unfortunately there isn't a current initiative that we are working on. We have to see if it requires any legal modifications to be able to avoid that situation and to recover land or to release land for mining activity or exploration. We understand the problem, but currently we haven't performed any type of specific initiatives. I wrote down in the questions that they referred to, these were management actions, short term, to be immediately executed. We all know that the current situation of our country during the last 3 years, where legislative actions are slow. We've presented bills that haven't had the best, how to put it, the best of luck, and have been archived and have been stopped and delayed, which are important legal modifications. And based on that, we've opted to have more management actions from the executive branch, for example, joint ventures, for example, between juniors and medium companies, but there are difficulties there. But we currently are working in an instrument, a long-term instrument, with a short, a medium, and long term to develop national mining policies. Or one can say, well, what does this have to do with this thing? This is a very concrete, specific thing, and we are trying to solve this problem. Well, this is the point, because in the end, what we are proposing to design this public policy, what a public policy does is to satisfy needs. What do authorities do to satisfy public needs? In the mining sector, we don't have a national mining policy, and this is the first one that we'll have, surprisingly, because Chile is a mining country. And we're elaborating this policy and we're identifying what are the best or the improvements that have to be made. And this is one of the issues that could be incorporated within the diagnosis. And not only the idea is to identify the problem, but also to propose a solution. Well, that is the advantage of this policy. And we will present it for assessment to be able to make so it is sustainable, to consider economic, social, and environmental factors, to have everything aligned with sustainability align with SDGs from the UN, and that is our point of view. We want mining and better mining, and the decisions of these areas will be done in this way. So this elaboration of public policies isn't being done in a black box. We've opened it for all citizens. The idea is that all, like in this panel, can participate in the national mining policy to raise these issues, and not only raise the issues, but to propose solutions. The most reasonable, the most sustainables will be proposed. So we invite you so that after this panel, you could join the virtual phase of the national mining policy to focus on exploration and to see what would be the solution that you see, which is the most sustainable and reasonable and the most realistic. Because believe me, as if we have more participation, the policies will propose legislation or changes in guidelines that will address these problems. And it won't be a current or a specific administration that will drive these measures. It will be citizens through participation that will have a say in the solution and that will give political backing during legislation. That is the virtue, the advantage of designing public policies with the citizenry, and that can be developed in future governments. That's the idea to create a state policy. So we invite you to participate in this process because the only way to address these problems and solve them is through participation in this case. Thank you. Can we have a last short question? There are many questions that relate to access and availability of information, basic geological information that has been collected during the last years. We know that this was an obligation in the mining code since 1983. However, it had been delayed. The implementation of how this information had to be provided was delayed. So there are many questions are focused on what is being done with that information and how we can access that. To have access to that information. Unfortunately, I have to leave now, but I'll answer this question very, very briefly and also take the freedom to answer another question that was in the chat that is related with platforms, the number of platforms and why the 40 in the north and not in the south. But first question, it's a legal obligation that it was not being met and not being enforced. This administration has taken this task and enforcing this obligation by exploration companies, and it's being collected and recorded. It's not being recorded in a or being stored in a file. It's being systemized and reporting and publishing online. www.cinecompanion.cl/SIGEX, SIGEX. You enter that page and you can extract that information. If the platform, as it occurs in government platforms, is not friendly, you can also request it of a public access information request. And regarding the number of platforms, the person that made the question, the answer is very simple. And that is something that we mentioned before. This difference classification between prospecting and exploration has to do with environmental impact. So the answer is it's very different, environmentally speaking, to do exploration in the desert where there's no people, where there's not as much biodiversity, where there are no normally much communities. To make a road doesn't entail much environmental impact as doing it in the south, where you to make a road you have high environmental impact. So it makes sense there, and it's reasonable that to be able to have an obligation to enter the environmental assessment system, the number of platform has to be less because the impact is higher. And that is the answer. Mr. Undersecretary, just one thing, if you could give the web page for digital participation, the digital phase, for the people that are listening so they can enter. The platform is www.politicanacionalminera.cl. And the phase that we opened yesterday is it's called the virtual phase. Every Thursday at 4 in the afternoon, people that are registered enter the link that you will receive and you can participate of a workshop where you'll be able to meet with people from all the areas of our country. A person from Arica can meet for people from Coquimbo and to talk of mining. And the people that are interested in exploration will be able to give their opinion and they have the possibility to record that. And that will give us political backing for this administration, the one that comes after, to present a bill to say, well, this was asked by citizens. And it wasn't one person, it was many. So all of those that are interested in exploration, we invite you then to participate of the virtual phase that we started yesterday. We concluded Thursday, November 19th. Hopefully, we'll have the largest amount of people possible. Mr. Undersecretary, we thank you for your time, your participation, the information that you provided. You've left us with many issues and you have solved many that we had. Thank you for participating. Thank you, Marcelo.
Gracias, igualmente. Gracias. Estimado, la verdad que ya estamos en
The
el
truth
horario.
is that we're on time. However, we ask those that can stay will continue to be very quick and as concise as possible to be able to address other issues, lesser issues. 50-20 minutes we should conclude. But to announce very quickly, Marco Zavala, who is a mining attorney for Verde Olivos, who also has vast experience on these issues. We'd like to hear from you. Thank you, Marcelo. I'm used to being the last, so
Creo primero agradecer a las cámaras.
I'd like to thank the chambers for this great webinar. It's been very useful. We've heard very interesting things. And to the people that connected to this morning, I hope it's also being of use. First of all, I'd like to confirm what has been said till now, that mining juniors and investment funds dedicated to exploration are key players in the industry. They take upon a huge risk. They explore, discover, and bring assets to the market, which, as José Ignacio said, is very important and maybe is not as valued as much as a country. Now, I have the difficult task of providing years of experience in 5 minutes, so I'll be as brief as possible. I think that this has to be defined or explained pre or post 2012. Prior to 2012, juniors had giant frenetic activity. We advised Canadian, Australian funds, offices from the United States, from England. We even had a Russian fund. And they explored copper, gold, iron, lithium. Groundfield project, Greenfield.
Muy activa lo que se hacía en ese momento.
There was much activity. We also had to work with the Phoenix funds, which
Esta
did joint
actividad
ventures with us. This activity abruptly stopped mid 2012. We were preparing to go public, and this was suspended because, if you remember, we had the Europe debt crisis. Greece fell, Portugal fell, followed by Spain, and commodity prices fell, plummeted, and that halted exploration activity in the world and in Chile. There was an important change in the dynamics, although
compañías junior
some
como
companies, junior companies continue, such as the ones we have at the panel. Also, there was a process of 4 or 5 years where we didn't see new players, which I said started to change 2017. There we started to see more interest, companies asking questions for new projects.
hubo algún problema con la
There was probably a problem with between the trade wars between China and the United States, but that was a very specific bump. But currently, they are returning to Chile. They are exploring. There are new players. But what I see some differences from what occurred 4 years ago.
son menos los autores nuevos.
We have less new players, generally Canadian, but there are space to have more Australians. Secondly, they are focused on gold and copper. Then there's been a small change in the business model. Many of these new companies that are arriving to Chile have financing, either private or publicly, so they do not require, or they don't have the need to find a deposit to go public. Which changes the dynamic of these companies. We've also seen concerning the environment and communities, which reflects the reality of the country, which has changed during the last 8 or 9 years. And that has been felt by the new players. And also, we are perceiving is a reduced or a reduced perception of risk. We haven't seen companies in greenfield projects. In general, we're looking for the same projects that have been explored, that have drilling that are positive, and blue skies. Which is worrisome because it's leaving more green mining property unexplored and can cause a deficit of projects. And to conclude, I know we have little time, I'd like to make comments. First, what clients have been perceiving as problems. Our clients express that they have executives that have experience in Chile, so they know the country. They have found problems. First, the lack of projects, which is what I said before. Everyone is looking for the same, so it's not easy to find an adequate project. And the other thing, it hasn't been mentioned, still there are project owners, the prospects that have a valuation of their projects that is high and a price structure in their options that entangle negotiations or there are changes in opinion. So that also goes against the strategy of companies or funds to hopefully have the most amount of funds and projects. And answering a question that was made from the audience, our clients all work not only in Chile, but in Argentina, Paraguay, Peru, Colombia. And without being chauvinist, what they say is that all companies have good and bad things, but Chile and then Peru are the favorite destinations of juniors. And that should continue to be the case. Marco, thank you. Very interesting, the topics that you touched on. Maria Paz, I understand that you had a question that you'd like to make. I know that you'll answer, that you've been answering many questions from the audience.
Gracias, Marcelo. Efectivamente, lo que
Thank you. But we want to ask the opinion to our panelists regarding as a solution alternative of what we talked before of the amount of areas that are being used that are not being used and that restrict the access to new players. I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion of to have a similar system such as Canada or Australia, known as the use it or lose it, or you use the mining rights and that you are indeed working in that activity, or these are expired or are taken away. Or another proposal is for them to pay a patent. So we'd like to hear your opinions on this issue, if this is the best measure or if you suggest maybe another measure to be able to solve this issue of access to exploration areas.
¿Quién quiere tomar la palabra?
¿Quién toma la palabra?
Who'd like to answer? Giancarlo?
Sí, un poco corto, un poco también tomando
Very short.
el punto que dejó Marco. Yo creo que
I think that there is an appetite for greenfields and companies, but the problem is that there aren't large land areas that
entonces María Paz,
to be able to apply greenfield. So it's what Maria Paz is talking about is
funcionar, la verdad.
I can't see a way how mining rights should work. If the rights have to be explored, and if they're not explored, then why do you have it? So I'm 100% on board that that should be mechanism.
Yo, como decía antes, no soy abogado.
As I said before, I'm not an attorney.
Compleja. Y proponía esas dos medidas de por
and I
ejemplo,
propose those two measures, for example, to accelerate the auctions or to execute actions and to avoid property overlapping as simple measures. But for sure, a change in mining rights has to be associated to this concept of use it or lose it. Thank you, Giancarlo. José Ignacio was also raising his hand. I completely agree with the system. It's a system from two countries that are much more developed than us that work and that we have to move towards that. This is a equation between legal certainty and to have more players in the market. It doesn't have to be done from one moment to the next.
Solo respecto a derechos nuevos O sea, en esto tenemos que ir haciendo algo que nos sirva como
We have to
país.
do something that helps as a country, and our North is very clear. It's very clear to have legal certainty so that foreign investors know where their investment is going. But on the other hand, we have to incorporate new small modifications, not small actually, but modifications that allow to have more players in the market, which is what we want
Vengan de la bolsa chilena, pero la verdad es que si podemos
from wherever they come.
bienvenidos todos y que exploren. Que nos
All
dejen la
welcome to explore,
información
so we can start to grow
Oye,
as a
muchas
country and an industry. Well, thank you to everyone. The truth is that I'd like to
gracias. La palabra haciendo
summarize everything that we've talked about from the minister, from moderators and panelists.
probablemente
I'll
muchas
answer probably many questions that are in the
con
Q&A with some thoughts that I'll make. Mining junior companies have been of great help for the development of deposits that are working or being used in Chile.
de cobre, intentando llegar a 6 desde hace tiempo, pero no se ha
Chile
podido.
is producing 5.7 million tons of copper. Out of the 5.7 are in production, at least 2 million of tons were discovered by junior companies as its origin. Majority of them are placed in the stock market of Toronto. And junior companies raise capital to continue working that allows them to abandon exploration or to sell to a major company to develop the project. This virtuous cycle requires more investors. And Chile, as a mining country, is absent. And we invite the capital market and investment funds to learn and to get involved in this market that has risks, but which are limited when there is knowledge to determine when to leave or when to continue and to achieve over average profitability. The amount of mining rights or majors have a role to sell or to lease junior companies their mining rights that don't have exploration in the foreseeable future. This can incentivize ENAMI and Codelco, or to give depth to the exploration market through monetized mining rights that haven't been explored for many years. Those are a summary of the majority of the issues that have been addressed during this seminar. I'd like to thank all the participants, to our audience that was much more than we expected, and thank you for everyone for being with us today, and thank you for the both chambers for organizing this event. Veronica? Well, I'd like to thank our panelists, the Undersecretary who left, to our moderators, to the Chilean Australian Chamber, that we worked very good together. And I'd like, there's probably millions of issues to be addressed, and we'll probably have to have a follow-up in a couple of months more. And to thank again, have an excellent day, a good long weekend for everyone, and thank you for your time that you took from our panelists. Jimena, please, your closing remarks. Well, thank you for everyone, and Marcelo for inviting us to be part of this seminar. To thank the panelists for these great presentations. There are many pending issues, and we believe that the voice of Canada and Australia are great examples that we have to follow. Maria Paz and Marco, as great moderators, if you could close. Maria Paz.
Muchas gracias, Marcelo. Bueno,
Thank you, Marcela. Well, thank you to the chambers for the organization, for the invitation. for all the attendants that were interested in participating in this conversation. And thank you to the organizers, Marco, Veronica, for the opportunity. We hope to meet in the future. Thank you, Maria Paz. Marco, once again.
Agradecer a las cámaras.
So just to thank the chambers, Jimena, Marcelo too, to all the panelists, to Maria Paz. I think we're able to do something that was very fun. We hope that it was useful. And as Veronica said, we need to have a second edition of this that hopefully could be focused on local financing and mining, which is key in Chile that we have to have. We thank your participation and we wish you an excellent weekend. Good weekend to everyone. Bye-bye.